Welcome to Debut Interview Series. I'm Kevin Cordi, and I'm the host and that crazy practitioner of play. If you don't know what debut is, listen close because we're going to tell you now. It's where we take three accomplished storytellers and they debut or tell a story for the very first time for you. And it's going to be amazing. But to set that up, we have an up close interview with the storytellers. And I am so glad to have this storyteller with us today. She's the author of 12 books. She's appeared on the Fox reality show Trading Spouses. I can't say that for every storyteller. She's been a corporate trainer. She's told stories for the last 25 years. She is a 10, I repeat that, 10-time Moth Story Slam winner. She has now traveled all 50 states, and I'm sure she has a story about each one of them. But today, she is on our program. She's on Debut, a fusion of storytelling and play. Ladies and gentlemen, it is a rich honor to bring on Silvana Clark.
Well, thank you for that introduction.
Oh, well, thank you for making your life so inspiring for that introduction. Savannah, how are you?
I am just fine this morning, doing well.
Excellent. We're just gonna have a conversation, and I kind of always ask this question in some way. Uh, how did you find story or story find you?
We adopted an 8-year-old daughter, and she came from quite an abusive background. And at that time, my husband, we were pretty much newlyweds, maybe only married 2 years. And we realized with her there had to be a lightness to our life, that we couldn't be bogged down with, did you get your homework done and tie your shoes, those kind of things, because she came from a different background. And I think that's where we kind of incorporated this lightheartedness, telling stories, making things silly. Okay, you haven't picked up all your room's a mess, but you know what? Let's pretend there's little fairies coming in, and let's pretend we're all little fairies and we're going to clean up this room. And we just really had to change our mindset. We couldn't be the typical parents of, like I said, where you have rules and regulations all the time, and lightening that up with stories. And it seemed to work because she's amazing today.
I love it. I just went to online, I heard Laura Sims speak yesterday, and she really talked about how sometimes we want to think about not necessarily the content, but the experience of story. And what you just said, working with your daughter, it is the experience of being in that moment that kind of lifts it. It's different than just reading something in a book, or maybe you want to expand on that, or agree or disagree.
Sure. From that, when we adopted our oldest at 8, we waited until she was 16, and then we thought, you know what? Let's have a baby. So our daughters are 17 years apart. And because of our experience with our older daughter, when our baby was born, my husband said, you know what? All these parents, all I hear is, no, don't do that. Don't touch, walk, be careful. Let's raise our daughter without saying no. And you know what? I mean, she's very accomplished. She worked at the White House. She has her own business now, so I know it worked out. But growing up, we didn't say no, no, you can't do that. It was, well, let's see if we could change that. How could we do that a little differently if she wanted to do something really crazy? And I think, again, it was that whole attitude of life is wonderful. It's out there. We don't have to be like other people. We can be different. And so, yes, our daughter never heard no when she was growing up. But you know what? She's polite. She's respectful. She's smart. She has a master's degree. So I think it worked.
I love hearing that, and at the same time, saying no closes off opportunity and questions. And my wife's an improv comedian, so just say yes is extremely important.
Yeah.
But walking into, you know, I think when you don't say no, it becomes co-creative or co-constructive, and so she became part of the process of her own raising. I'm just reading into what you're saying. Please disagree if I'm wrong. And that sounds so story rich.
It is. And a lot of people, if I seldom would say we're raising our daughter without saying no,
Mm.
but they could just kind of see it. I remember one time I was talking to a friend. We just come out of a parking lot and there was a little playground over there. And my daughter came over, she was about 4, and she says, Mom, can I go on the playground? And I looked at her and I said, well, of course, you don't need to ask because we were at the edge of a park. There's a playground. I'm talking to someone. Why wouldn't she go over to the park? And I remember my friend saying, well, don't you want her to ask? And I said, well, in this situation, it makes sense. There's a playground. Go play. You don't have to ask me to play on a playground. And so I think it's sort of that attitude of just, like you said, say yes in improv, only we did it every day. And if she wanted to have ice cream for breakfast once, so what? What's wrong with ice cream for breakfast? Fine, eat it. We don't care. And it's not a big deal. And we go on to something else. So I guess that's sort of our philosophy.
I think it's the teacher in me that hears, instead of restrict, reflect. Really think about your choices, and you give freedom. And I think storytelling, should follow that. But sometimes we get rigid in the rules.
Yeah.
Sometimes we think we have to write our story first and then and tell it a certain way. I mean, actually, some of the early storytelling practitioners, and I really value what they said, but sometimes I know one in particular that said, like one of the early writings, that story can never teach anything else beyond the story itself, but it wouldn't teach history, it wouldn't teach social studies, it wouldn't teach math. I don't know. Rules were made for breaking sometimes, but they were also for knowing. And I don't want to get off course, but I love the philosophy that you have. And so, do you move that into your storytelling process as well?
I do to a certain extent. I share a lot of those stories. And then sometimes people come up and they say, oh, I could never do that. I'm too scared, or it's too nerve wracking. My one dream was to train my dog for TV commercials. I mean, growing up, that's all I wanted to do was train a dog for TV commercials, which is the weirdest dream to have. And yet I did all sorts of strange things to be able to get my dog famous. And he has a headshot and he has his resume and he's done all sorts of commercials. He's in doggy heaven right now. But, I think I tell stories about that and people always come up and they go, oh, my dog would be perfect for commercials. And then I say, well, have you done anything to pursue that? Oh, no, but he'd be perfect for commercials. And I just want to say, well, it takes a little work. Is your dog trained? Can he even sit on command? Oh, no, he can't do anything. Well, you're probably got a long way to go, but do something. So that's the way it goes in my storytelling.
Well, it sounds like you enact what you want to get done. And at the same time, there are so many people that, they hear your storyteller, you hear your writer, they're like, I wish I could write. As soon as I retire, I'm going to write. Then they retire. As soon as I know what retirement is, I'm going to write. It has to be part, at least for me, it has to be part of your practice. So training
Right.
dogs, and what did you train your dog to do?
Oh,
And
if I
let's give him his name.
sneeze,
What's the dog's name? We'll give him
Sherman. That's
oh,
Sherman. If
Herman,
I
of
had
course.
time, I could bring out his headshot. For instance, if I went, Achoo! He'd go and bring a tissue and bring it to me. He would, he'd play the toy piano. He did a campaign for the Washington Lottery Association. And because he could play the piano with his paw, they needed him to type on a typewriter. But, it was the same thing, so that he put his little paw and he pretended like he was typing on the typewriter. And then he took his mouth and he pulled the paper out of the typewriter. Those of you that don't know what a typewriter is, there's paper that comes out. And then he had to bring me the paper. And a lot of it was simply, sometimes he had to do the same thing 20 times. I mean, one time I was on a beam about 15 feet in the air because they needed him to come in and look up at the light and bark 2 times, turn around and come back in 4 seconds, exactly 4 seconds. So my daughter's holding him off camera. I'm up here and then I say, Sherman, and he would come in, he'd look up at me. This was his cue to speak. So then he spoke, and then my daughter would say, Sherman, and then he'd turn and come back. We had to do that 20 times. And some dogs don't do it. Sherman liked it. So it was just one of those things that he was kind of suited. He loved all the attention. They'd pick him up in a limo, and we would go in a limo to his next shoot. So It was fun.
Oh, I absolutely love it. And like you said, that comes from practice and fun. Even as you're explaining it, although it's work, I hear it's fun.
It is.
That you really, really enjoyed it. Now, I would be amiss if I didn't ask you about trading spouses. And I'm sure that was food for the grist mill for the story mill. Can you just tease us a little bit?
Sure, sure. They put me with a family that had 3 kids. They had no fun. They did not go even a family picnic. They'd never been on a picnic. They'd never been on a vacation. The dad was very domineering, and he said to me, "In my house, it goes the way I want. It's my way or the highway." His wife was petrified of him. I mean, she walked down the hall once. There's a little piece of paper, and he just said, "Pick up that paper. How dare you walk down that hall without picking up that paper? Don't you ever do that again." His kids were terrified of him. Of course, I come in for 1 week. I mean, I destroyed his life because obviously I didn't let him talk to me like that. I remember one time, he, again, obviously very macho, we were going to go out to dinner, and I said, "Let me drive your truck." And he said, "I'm not having a woman drive my car." And I said, "No." And he had signed a contract. He had to do whatever I said. So he was so mad. So I got in his truck, and we're driving down this little street where everyone knew him in town. And I have the window rolled down, and I'm honking the horn going, "Here's," I'll say his name, "Jeff." That's not his name. I'll say, "Here's Jeff, here's Jeff." And people would wave because they'd see Jeff, and they couldn't figure out why I was driving. And he was so furious. So I tormented him. But at the end, he did say, "I know I need to change, or my kids will hate me and my wife will divorce me." So it was a week of terror for him, but I think I got through a little bit to loosen up a bit.
And well, and you already answered my question. Often they have reconciliation or at least some kind of awareness. And what awareness did you come out with?
I came out that I sure love my family, and I and I love my husband. One of the things they used to do when I was doing corporate training, and our daughter was 4 and 5. Of course, she would say, "Mom, don't leave me, don't leave me." And I had to go. It was my job. I was gone for 2, 3 days. So my husband, they did this thing where when I was gone, they would make costumes that they would wear when they picked me up at the airport. Now, our airport was fairly small. So one time I had arrived, they picked me up, and Sandra at 4, she knew the entire score to Phantom of the Opera. I don't know how appropriate that was. So she's in this fancy dress. My husband's in a black suit jacket with half a wet paper towel over his face because he's the Phantom. And our daughter is there going, "Oh!" So she's singing opera. Another time they came as if they were from Greece, and he's got his hair slicked back, and she's got her pink jacket on, and she's Sandy. And what else have they done? Oh, they did the Scarecrow and the Wizard of Oz. And my husband literally has overalls with straw coming out. And my daughter is Dorothy with her little basket and her dog. And I think, that's what our family was. If Mom goes to the airport and we pick her up, we have to dress in costume. And she did that for years. And so I think that's what taught me with trading spouses is I love my life. I don't care if people think we're crazy. We're having a good time.
I love it. You mentioned the Wizard of Oz, so story for story. I was opening for the Tahoe Theater in California. And it was the premiere of the Wizard of Oz. They were coming in, not the premiere, obviously.
Yeah.
And they had the Lollipop Kid there. He was 80 years old. And I thought,
Oh.
wow, what an honor. He had a big lollipop. And I remember I went up and all I heard all day was, "No, kid, I'm not singing the song, and it's $20 for an autograph."
He had his priorities.
My job was slowly to get the kids away. And it might have been just a bad day, but it was definitely an interesting, but my touchstone to the Wizard of Oz.
Yes.
Also, you've been on the Moth stage not once but 10 times, and I love it. I was, in New York. I went to the Moth. My name was drawn from the hat. I was second place until someone talked about sleeping with their their English professor. and falling off a roller coaster, just didn't make it. And my wife said, Kevin, they tell stories differently at the Moth, and maybe your style. I looked it up. She was like a 6-time champion.
Yeah.
So I'm
Oh,
okay with that.
there's a whole technique with the Moth. There is. I mean, because I have some fun stories, but then I think, oh, that's not going to win. I need one that's going to win because I get competitive. So it is a different style, but it's still fun. And yeah, I agree. I've had sometimes I'm up there, I'm first place, and I see it, and then it's speaker number 10 comes out, and I remember the one time told this amazing story about his leg was amputated and he wanted to carry his little daughter on his shoulders. Well, of course he's going to win over my story of Sherman and, being in a Steven Spielberg movie. That just doesn't do it. So there's a place for all stories.
So what was it like from the first time you were on the Moth to well, I don't know if there's a last time. You're probably still getting on the Moth.
Yeah. Well, the first time, of course, as a professional speaker, and back in the old days, you would wear a suit when I spoke for businesses, and you have pantyhose and makeup, that whole thing. And so my daughter had just said, Mom, go to the Moth. I think you'd like this. Go tell a story. I do nothing about it. Just it had to be 5 minutes. So I get to Seattle. Of course, I'm dressed up. I have my fancy shoes. I have a very nice sweater, my capri pants that are pressed. And I get there and everybody, especially Seattle, they're in their jeans and their flannel shirts and they're going up there and telling their stories. But I went up and then afterward, I didn't win, but afterwards the producer came and said, oh, I loved you. Can you do this show? And so she already gave me a gig for my first show. But of course, now I know to dress more relaxed and to be more relaxed.
I remember when I was there in New York, I mean, there was a person with many colored hair, which was great. And there was suited people and it was wall to wall people. And I've seen the storytelling. I mean, when I was 18 and a storyteller, there were few people traveling as storytellers. And people do tell me that I was one of the youngest traveling touring storytellers. But it's great to see such a renaissance.
I love it.
And the Moth isn't the only one in town. This month I have a book coming out that I edited called Tomorrow's Storytellers Today, and it has some Moth tellers, but at the same time it has places that raises people on myth. There's just beautiful things going on, and so it's great to hear. What is one of the things that you're taking home that you still use from your Moth experience?
Is there has to be an emotional connection. I can tell you funny stories, about my husband dressing up and as the Wizard of Oz, picking me up at the airport. And it's a great story, but I don't think it might inspire you, Kevin, to say, oh, I'm going to dress up next time I pick my wife up at the airport. There has to be some more of an emotional connection. Not that it has to be phony, but something that makes you feel, oh, that's good parenting, or I guess just a little bit more than a story is a story, because I have lots of stories. So I've learned that I'm pretty factual. So it's that's my weakness, I think, is to get that emotional connection, because I want to just tell you the story. Hey, it's funny or it's sad and that's it. Instead of, wow, this really affected me. And from that point on, this and this happened.
I mentioned Laura Sims, and she said, you need more than stories in your bag. You need you. And if I just heard, you need to make that connection. You need to really reach out and say, hey, I know you're there with me, or this is how I'm going to work to get you there. And there's so much, there's amazing things going on with storytelling right now. There's 99-second stories going on. And I've heard people like,
those,
I could never.
Oh, those are fun. Hey, I won a grand slam for the 99-second. But boy, that is the hardest. You have to write that one out because you have to time it. And they are strict. You go over 99 seconds, you're out. They will say, that's it. You don't qualify. But to get a big story to 99 seconds, have a beginning, a middle, and an end, and not have to talk super fast because you feel you got to get it all in.
And I've heard people highbrow it, say, "Oh, you can never tell a full story in 99 seconds." You can't. Some people say you can't do it in 7 minutes or 30 minutes, or I know one teller, a native teller, that tells a whole story for a weekend without little stops in the native tradition. It's not our job to define. We should own how we see story, I think, but we should be open to how story can change over the years. At least I've learned that. What do you think?
Oh, definitely, definitely. I think you had a good point of people saying, "Oh, you can't tell a story in 99 seconds." There are people, they tell these stories in 99 seconds, and I am just watching transfixed, thinking, "Oh my gosh, how did they get all that in there?" And then it was so meaningful. And then sometimes you go to storytellers and they'll say, "Oh, you can do a story for 20 minutes." And 10 minutes in, I'm thinking, "Okay, let's wrap it up here. We've got a few too many details." So
Right.
we don't need to, it's when they say, well, I think it was last Tuesday. No, wait, was it Wednesday? No, I think it was Thursday. And you just want to say, let's get to the points. I don't know if that answered your question, but yes, the 99-second is one thing. The weekend is another thing. And when it's well done and in the right setting, it's wonderful.
you know, 6 word memoir has a different reaction than a one line joke. And so I think there's craft involved in everything. And, having an invitation to tell stories in different platforms. I mean, even debut. I don't know any platform like that, but I'm
Yeah.
hoping that it really helps move toward play. And I heard a challenge in there that you had to write a 99 second to get it down to the time. I think a little playful coaching I might be able to get that through a spoken before the written, but I don't know. I've had to do it, teaching storytelling at the high school level. We do, stories, the same story in 5 minutes, the same story in 30 seconds, same story in 99 seconds, or whatever the case may be. And you're not looking for the same story. You're just looking for a gripping moment kind of thing.
Right.
I'm so enjoying our chat.
Oh, this is fun. Very fun.
So let's talk a little bit about how you define or use play in the work that you do.
When I was on the speaking circuit, so to say, for 25 years, I'm basically retired now and just goofing around. Um, my sessions, say if I had to do a 3-hour session on team building, my sessions were always very, very interactive. I had small group activities, I had props, I had, like now everybody has slime, the kids make that slime and it kind of oozes out. I was doing slime 25 years ago when people didn't know what to do with it. And if people, I'd put slime out on the desk and then they would be playing with it. And they'd have to come up with an activity to team building with slime. And everybody's just having a good time and there's slime on the floor. And um, so I think it's always been a part of my life. I don't think I could stand for 3 hours and do straight lecture on team building. And yet I've heard some people do, and they're very good at it and they can keep your attention. But for me, it was 15 minutes of a little, here's a couple good points, here's some statistics. Now let's put that into action. And we had awards for the most energetic speaker, the best team building using a bowling ball. So all those things that I did, which just became a part of my 25 years of doing training around the world.
I love it. And inherent in all of that is play. Um, and you mentioned slime. I guess it's this week had the largest blast of slime ever. I think it was like a mountain size, blast, because one student who unfortunately had terminal cancer, a child, wanted to see this. So they built this like 2-story slime explosion.
Oh, oh my. Oh, it's wonderful.
Yeah. And story has that ability to reach out and hold you for a moment and not think about the illness and think about the where you are. It takes you different places, and I think play can do that too. So you've talked a little bit about your process, so we'll talk a little deeper. Do you start with a written story and then play around, or do you start in the
I
middle?
do. I type things out. And the reason I do is because if I start telling it, by the time I get to the end, I forget what I've said at the beginning. And did I already make that point? So for me, it's just easy to type it out very rough, very rough. And then I say, oh, wait a minute, why am I telling about the restaurant up here? It really needs to go down here because that makes more sense. And then, of course, I think it through in my mind, and I lay in bed and I'm thinking again how to process it and shape it that way. But I do definitely type it out first. I'll show you, I got it right here. So this is one of my notebooks. Whoops. And so I have all my stories. So let's see if I hold it up, it shows even better.
I see
So I have the little tabs, and you can see how thick it is. This is a huge notebook. Because also too, like with the Moth, you're not supposed to repeat stories. And so if I'm ready to do the Moth, and then I think, did I tell that story to Moth, or was that with Kevin, or was that somewhere else? So I have my notebook and I can look and see what I've done.
So, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm hearing there's a lot of thinking before it gets to the paper. There's a lot of wrestling in the head. Because we don't give ourselves credit for the play wrestling. I call it word dancing. I think you have to word dance out loud in the world you're making before you put it in print. But I'm a writing director, so I firmly believe in writing as well. I just think sometimes we go to a vacuous desk before we've ever explored the world we need to be in. And I hear that brain a wrestling before you ever get to that paper. And then I hear wrestling more.
Of course. You have to have the thought of, okay, do I want to tell the story about Sherman when he ran into a skunk right before the limo was going to pick him up to take him to go do a shoot, and my dog is smelling like a skunk? Is that really a story? Okay, well, but what if I change it this way? What if I start with this? And so I kind of have that in my mind, and then I put it on paper so I can see it even more, and then I go out again away from the paper.
So for me, that's the building block of all stories, is in imagine, what if, and have you considered. And so whether we're working by ourselves, we're constantly, at least the writers that I've worked with, the storytellers I work with, the drama people that work with, they're always working with the realm of possibility. And I see that in the notebook by all the editing marks. I hear it on what you're saying and not saying. So it sounds like, and I'm not feeding words, it sounds like play is part of the whole process. It's just, it doesn't stop, start, and end.
And for me, and I think especially now, because I'm not, when I was working and had a job, I could be thinking a week ahead of time, oh, they want this new program on humor in the workplace. And my mind can be thinking how to do that. Well, I don't have that anymore. I'm not out there doing an 8-hour training session. So my stories are kind of what I have now. And so that's where I do think about it at night, and then, or I'll even wake my husband up. Do you think I should talk about the time we did this, or do you think I should do this? And then of course he says, I don't really care. I want to go to sleep. But for me, it's very important. So yes, it's always something in your mind that keeps going, but it's sort of, it's stimulating. Instead of thinking, oh, what's the next TV show I'm going to watch? I'm thinking, oh, what they said on that over there, I could probably change that and add that to the story at the beginning. And that keeps me busy.
And I think we need playful partners who deeply listen and say, I have to go to sleep now. No, I don't know when you deeply listen. And honestly, I think the best advice sometimes we can give is that person tell us what they saw when they heard your idea.
Right. Right.
And so it sounds like you're having fun with the stories. You're, and I have my own little file of notebooks of stories, and looking at how we work with the process is always, we should always put things into playful practice and say, oh, wow, this worked for this story. Maybe if I do this, it might work differently. I just think sometimes in school, and I am a high school teacher and a college professor, we artificialize or regiment how we can be creative. What do you think?
Creativity is one of those things, and I used to do 8-hour sessions on how to be more creative. And some people, they walk into the class and the first thing they say is, I'm never going to be creative. You can't make me be creative, and I don't want to be creative. And then, of course, I'm thinking, why are you even here? Yeah. But, I grew up in a very untraditional home, and my mother was very, very creative in a very different way. She taught me to shoplift at a very early age. She had me stealing a car at midnight in East St. Louis. So she had
Valuable
no
skills.
filter. Yeah, yeah. Oh, great. Yeah, great skills. She had no filters whatsoever. So anything goes. And I think in a very I don't know what the right word is, very weird way, I grew up thinking you could do anything, you could say anything, you could be anything, because like I said, she had no filters. If she wanted to steal something, she would steal it. That was it. If she wanted to tell somebody off, she'd tell somebody off. And so part of that creativity, you just have to channel it a little bit instead of shoplifting. You can use your skills somehow, some other ways. So I think that creativity it's just part of it. I think so many people are so worried, what will others think? So if I tell a story and I tell of one story I tell, my daughter at 4, the youngest, she did all these TV commercials, and she was a little preschool darling for Fisher Price and little princess or whatever those were. So she was doing a commercial for Mattel, and anyway, somehow they needed a mother, and they asked if I would audition for the mother. And I said, I don't know what I'm doing. And they said, yeah, we need you just be really enthusiastic. Well, my enthusiasm is, over the top of the wall, no matter what I do. So when I was supposed to be enthusiastic about these little kids going down a slide during my audition, I'm going, yeah, let's go down the slide. Oh, it's going to be great. And I'm jumping around and I'm dancing. And I do the dance like Elaine does, on Seinfeld, her crazy dance. I incorporate that. And then I look, and the 4 casting directors, I mean, their mouths are hanging down because they couldn't believe how crazy I was. Yeah, I think some creativity, people might want to be creative, but they're so worried about what other people will think. Maybe they're doing some quilt that's different than your normal quilt at a quilt shop. It's doing something bizarre. Maybe there's feathers coming up. And then there's always that feeling, oh, I shouldn't do it because the quilting book says, no, you have to use 4 stitches per inch or whatever that is they do. And like I said, I was doing an audition, a spontaneous, I hadn't expected, and I was supposed to be a very enthusiastic mother with preschoolers. Well, I was all over the top, and I'm jumping up and down, and I'm dancing. I did the Elaine dance from Seinfeld to show how enthusiastic I was, and the directors couldn't believe how I was. And then the lady who got the part, I watched her audition for being enthusiastic, and she went, oh, kids, let's go down the slide. And she got the part. And I thought, that's not creativity. But for me, creativity is, I could be loud because that's me, and to go ahead and do it. But so many people, they want to be creative, maybe write a book on a different topic, and then they go back to the same thing. I'm going to write a book on goal setting. Well, there are thousands of books on goal setting. We don't need another book on goal setting. Pick another topic. But the thing is, goal setting is a trend right now, so I'll write a book. So creativity just means don't worry so much about what other people think.
Yeah, I remember I was at a conference and somebody came up to me and said, oh, you're a storyteller. Well, that's really in fad right now. I said, when did storytelling leave? I don't know. And,
Yeah.
I think it comes back to something that we just said at the beginning. We need to avoid those no's. If we want to write a book and it's about goal setting, it should be about how goal set while juggling a chimpanzee, or
Exactly.
something that moves it, that's new. And, if we listen to the no's, there's so many people that and they're internal, I can't go on a Moth stage because I haven't practiced enough. I can't, graduate. I can't do this. I can't do this. Now, we should listen to the resistance and understand what it is for, but we should always work toward the yes. I think you've said that time and time again. What a wonderful, zany, fun, contemplative, lovely life and journey. Let me ask you this question. Why debut?
I like the idea. So often when you've done a lot of stories, say like I've done a Moth, people are sort of hesitant to say, I think you could improve it by this and this, because just by the fact that you've won a Moth, I don't want to say a higher level, but you've got some degree of accomplishment. And so people are hesitant to say, maybe you could do this or this. And so I thought with debut, I go, hey, afterwards, people are going to give some feedback. I can switch, I can learn from it. And it's more interactive instead of, here's my story. Goodbye. I'm done.
And that is one of the purposes of debut, so that we can open the curtain and say, this is a practice, this is a process. Storytelling doesn't have to be a lonely business. I know people who have created partners from debut because they listened so well. I know people who said, oh wow, I played with this idea, I would have never done this in a million years, and selfishly I get to play. I am not that parent that goes, oh, please jump off the slide. It just doesn't work that way.
Right.
But I get to play with people like yourself, and it is such a gift. Lance Simpson said, stories are gifts. It's up to us to take them and receive them. And I look at debut and the people on it as a gift. When is debut?
Oh, you're asking me?
Yeah. It's all right. I'll help you if you don't know.
Wait, here's my calendar. Wait, you know what? No, I have it in big circle. It's even highlighted in orange.
Hey,
orange.
We get orange. Excellent.
Debut, Kevin's Stories, 11 a.m. and highlighted in orange. So it's a big deal.
In Washington time. And
in Washington, yes.
Eastern,
Washington time.
It's a different time. So yes, and we're so glad to have you on debut. And for some reason, I want to ask this question, just because I'm super curious. What is a great day for you?
A great day begins with an early morning walk through the woods. We fortunately we live in our backyard goes to a 300-acre park with old growth cedar and waterfalls, and people come from all over the state to come walk in our park. So to get up early with my husband and I, take that walk, and that energizes me for the rest of the day. And then usually there's a text between my two daughters, something funny, a silly poem or a picture or something crazy. And then usually in the evening, just kind of hanging out with my husband. We've been married 44 years. We love being together. We love doing things. So it's nothing fancy. I mean, anytime I can travel. We're leaving in 2 weeks, hopefully for 6 weeks in Europe. We'll see how that goes, but we're going to blaze forward with that.
And I wish you a safe journey on that. I know that we're collecting hard stories right now, but we also have to laugh. And so, in all these years as a speaker, as a consultant, as a spouse trader, what are 3 pieces of advice you wish you had back then that you could give to someone now about story making, storytelling, or play?
I'm sure people will say this all the time. Don't be afraid to take a risk. And that's different for different people. For some people, a risk might be going up to a neighbor and just saying, hi, I saw you moved in. Nice to meet you. That could be a big risk for some people. For me, I go over, hey, hi, how are you? But to take a risk at your own level, because once you take that little risk, then you realize, oh, I can do that. I can take a bigger risk and a bigger risk. So I think taking those risks. The other thing, number 2 would be, don't take yourself so seriously. Again, I grew up in a home. My mom literally would say to my brothers and I, don't laugh. You have no reason to laugh because your life is so miserable. So I was very serious growing up. I mean, there was no laughter. There was no fun. So I think that even if you come from a dysfunctional family like that you can lighten up a little bit. And then again, that goes more and more, because I never used to be like this, because I was told not to laugh, not to smile, not to have fun. And the third thing I think is find at least one person that you can really share most of your life with. And maybe it's not a spouse, maybe it's just a friend. I don't say just a friend. Maybe it's a relative, an aunt that you feel comfortable with, but you don't see very often, to kind of develop that, think there's one person that, you hear a good joke, you can call that person. And I think those 3 things give maybe a more well-rounded approach to having fun in life and doing more play.
What great advice. We do need that one person that we can say, hey, I'm having a bad day. Can you just listen? Or, I know it's an old joke, but I just have to tell it to someone.
Exactly.
and and having that richness, and not taking ourselves so seriously. Sometimes we got to
Right,
run and
exactly.
run in the rain and not worry about it raining. um
Yes.
I so appreciate it, and we could talk forever. And but at the same time, we are going to be talking more on debut. And the way I see it, we've just formed our own connection, and I look
Yes,
forward
we
to
did.
keeping that connection. Savannah Clark, you have the last word.
I would say if you're interested in finding out more about storytelling, what it's all about, or maybe you already know about stories and you just want to have a delightful evening, I think you should check out Debut. I'm going to be there. I'm looking forward to it because I'm not 100% sure what's going to happen, but that's part of taking a risk and part of being creative. Thank you.
Let's just start.
Yeah.